There's just the lines. And I did trace these, so don't think I'm awesome or anything. What I realized when drawing this character, what I learned in boating school today. They have very square angles with how they draw their limbs. For example, looking at this is a square angle. It's not like, if you look at the fighting scenes in Fooly Cooly, their arms go like this. And they're like squibblins. They're like wee little squibbling arms. They get really rounded to just express a lot of motion, and that's not what this style does. It has actually a lot of square angles. Her chin has a square angle on it. This has a square angle. Part of her hair has very sharp triangles. So there's actually not that much softness going on with this, which is really surprising once you start drawing it, because you would think this character looks soft, but she's not. She's not. Let's just analyze this for just a second. Just a second. Okay? We got a square angle here. It comes down into a tapered line there. Bam! Then we got a curve. Okay, that's weird. Then we got another curvy line, but then it ends in a square there. What? And then we have a curved line, but wait! It ends the curve and loops back around in a square fashion. We have a square that comes into a curve. We have a curve that comes into a square. That is the pattern of how to draw this. Curves and squares interjecting into a magical dance of a character with curves and squares. It's very selective, the way she draws curves. Most of her stuff is actually fairly static. Like these things, these are basically just polygons. These are a little bit curved, but they have a very sharp point. So you get what I'm trying to say. Alright, let's move on. One of the biggest parts of this is mostly just to get the shape of the face right. Because this is a curve. Come down into a very fine triangle, into a little bit of a triangle shape there. If you draw this like that, kind of like how they draw Fruits Basket, not that obnoxious, but they have a point as the chin, it won't look right. If you give her too much of a curve, she's not going to look right either. So take hint at these subtle points. Now she has a weird mustache beard thing. Okay, next. This is something that's very important with how to draw stuff. I don't have a thin enough line weight right now. I have to use a number 2 on the image size that I'm on right now. Yeah, I had to use a number 2. In Photoshop, number 2 pixels. 2 pixels is the number I'm trying to explain. Use a 2 pixel point tip. You gotta use 2 pixels. Okay. The line weight is very important with this character, because if you use too thick of lines, it's gonna look like the Powerpuff Girls or something. And if you use too thin lines, it's probably not gonna look like anything, because anything smaller than this, like that's an example of that. It's way too thin. You can't even see the lines. So with that, with our small line size, like this is me pushing as hard as I can on the thing, and that's lightly. That's how big it is. You use a lot of detail with the clothing, because you can get away with that because you have such a small pen point. Details, details, details. Look at how detailed these clothes are, alright? I'm going to zoom in even more. Okay. And if you look over here, you can see how it's colored, but it's clearer on my lines because they're darker. She's got her neck. She's got something under her collar. She's got a collar. She's got another collar that covers her shoulders. She's got this tuft thingy with all these different chunks on it. She's got her breastplate with this weird thing hanging off of it. I don't even why. But anyway, she's also got a seam line here with some accents. You can see the seam line in how they would have sewed her clothing on the side of her and also on the other side of her, so it's got multiple seam lines and a bunch of wrinkles and stuff. It's very detailed. So if you try to replicate this style and you don't add that much detail, it's not going to look the same at all. Seam lines is something very important with drawing anime clothing, and I'll get to that on a different tutorial. You learn how to do that naturally from sewing cosplays, but, you know, there's something to it with drawing as well. Oh yes, everything on her clothing, almost everything, has a border. This does not, but this does. Her breastplate has a border, like that. This seam / accent thing has a border. These triangles have a border. This thing, everything has a border. So if you're drawing like this, and you draw, if you're making an original art piece and you say you draw a lotus flower or something, if you just draw a lotus flower on the character and it looks stale and it doesn't look right and it looks stagnant, you can add some borders on there. And then it'll start looking more in the same world. And if it's a piece of clothing, you might even be able to add some seam lines onto the sides of it or something. I don't know why a lotus flower would have seam lines, but it does, apparently. So, there's another thing that you can do. Okay, the line art needs to be colored. It cannot be black lines. I learned this after quite a while of staring at this drawing that I did. Oh, right, it was on its own layer. Durr! Okay, let's draw something, friends. Also, if you're wondering what to be drawing right now, just practice what I'm explaining, I guess. I'm not drawing this straight ahead, because I already drew it. I just want to get out all the explanations I have for how to do this. So, if you're stuck on what to do right now, try drawing clothing the way it looks here. Try drawing the hair the way it looks. I will put the file of this on my YouTube video, so then there, you can just copy over what I drew, or whatever you want to do. Just keep drawing. Let's draw a head. And that's not how you're supposed to draw a head. That's not how you're supposed to draw a head. She has butterfly ears. That's something I forgot to mention. They draw her ears like butterflies. Look at that. This is how they draw ears. She, they, whoever. So it kind of looks like, if you put them together, they kind of look like a butterfly. Kind of like, wee. Yeah. There are many different ways to draw ears, and that is how she draws them. So if you're going to replicate this, then do it like straight line out, well, diagonal line out, curve it in, curve it around again, attach to the face, and the extra ear stuff. So, anyway, I'm going to put that on there. Where's the forehead? That's a big forehead, but that's how they do that. And the hairline's about there. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Do big fat eyes. Yeah, wow, animal. Oh no. Oh, animal. Okay. Good. Alright. So this is its own layer, alright? Let's select all. Image on Photoshop. Hue saturation. Click the colorize box and that will give it color. Saturation all the way up. Lightness higher. And that will make it a color. Okay? You have to click the colorize box. Otherwise it will stay black. And then you can just change the color. What I did, because that's what it looks like on their art, is made it a kind of tannish color. Desaturate it more than you probably think you should. And it's fairly in the middle of the tones. Do that. So now it looks dark. And it doesn't look like a black line. I'm going to undo that so you can tell my lines from the other lines. Next. You've got your colored line art. How do you make the line art look right? How do you make the line art look like somebody drew this with pencil and then went over it with watercolor? Well, first of all, I would say, get all your drawing done, put in some line weight in there, make it look nice, do whatever you need to do. You know, get some line weight, la la la. And then I went through with a number one single pixel, and just did sketchies. Just little sketchies all the way around my line art. Just to make it look a little bit sketchier, because that's what her art looks like. If you look at these lines that are pixels now, if you look at it closely, they're not like right here, it's not the cleanest light art in the world. It has that sketchy quality of it, which I like when it comes to, you know, watercolor. When you do watercolor drawings, when you draw something you don't want to erase a lot because that ruins the quality of the paper and the absorbency, you just sketch it out and then you color over it. So that's why that is a thing, I would think. So add sketchy lines wherever you see fit. Don't make it too sketchy, like don't make it like blah, 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 blah. Don't lose all your line weight. See, like I didn't touch this point down here, but I added a little, you know, if wherever you think you would have sketched it multiple times to get a good curve or a good line, add some extra lines on there if you don't have them already. So that adds the sketchiness. And then the last thing is to add the the varying should make it look right. I don't know. You add noise. I actually tried doing this by adding noise, which is a filter with Photoshop, but I don't like how that looks because it looks really pixelated, and I don't want it to look pixelated. You can draw the lines using the pencil tool in Photoshop. Number 2 pencil, it looks like this. You can see it's got a little bit of a grainy quality to it. Or, if you've already drawn it and you're screwed, you can go over it again by doing this. Let me get my lines. Okay, here's a line. That's a big fat line. Let me make that smaller. Alright, here's some lines. Okay, here's my line with color. I've already colored my line. I've already added the sketchiness. I'm pretty much done with the line art. I just want to be done with the line art. Okay, so you use this magical button right over here. You've got your layer selected with your lines on it. And you click this nice little checkered box button. That locks the layer so that you can't draw on it unless you've already drawn there. So let me make an example. See, I can only draw in what I've got on that layer. So we then use the dodge and burn tool in a very, very small 1 pixel is what I used thing. And you just go, and you make the lines look varied. Oh, that's too big. 1. No. Whoa, no, no. No, no, no. No. 1. Okay. See? And you just scribble on over it like this, and that will give you that nice sketched on watercolor sketch kind of look to it. It has nothing to do with watercolor per se, but it has to do with, you know, making it look like a sketched line rather than a computer line, which is a very ugly thing when you're trying to replicate traditional art.